regime change in Iraq. It was Bill Clinton who came up with the policy. It was Hillary Clinton who supported it and the war. And so when we talk about regime change, and now let's just take a look at, they're not mad at Trump. I'm talking about both parties because of the fact he went into Venezuela. They're mad because of the fact that they won't put Machado in there. They're mad. And just take a look. When you talk about how this thing worked, the current Maduro is gone. But guess what? The vice president is sworn in. That's why you have a vice president. And we're mad at that because we don't like Rodriguez. No matter how bad of a person they may be, they followed their law. The vice president was sworn in. Now, what gives us the right that we can go in, though they said the election was a fraud and she may have won in the past or the other guy that just ran, but what gives us the right to say we're going to put this person in? And that's what we have to get over and understand.
I think a lot has changed since I was in college, and the fervor about supporting the flag and, we have to remove Saddam Hussein and it's necessary. I mean, again, even then, 19, 20 years old, even then I knew, this doesn't make any sense. But I'm getting the sense now that there is a consensus amongst the American populace that, I'm not really buying any of this. I think that this is just an overextended military engagement. The fact that the president is suggesting a 1.5 trillion with a T military budget. Like at some point, you just have to recognize that the system is going to collapse on itself because there's just no viability here. But I also think that, as I mentioned at the top, gentlemen, we are being dog walked in so many respects. And as we transition over to Iran, and we're seeing just this absolute ratcheting up of the propaganda to try to convince us that, the Iranian people are rising up. Well, the Iranian people may be rising up against the Ayatollah, but they don't want the West taking over their country. And so from Al Jazeera, I think that this is actually extremely telling in terms of what's actually going on here. And that is Iran accuses foreign intelligence of being behind protest movement. Israel's covert operations in Iran spark allegations of destabilizing protests as tensions escalate. Gentlemen, what is your take on what is currently going on in Tehran?
Larry, let me go first on this because, as I said, facts, opinions, and assumptions. I'm going to give you a fact. Peter and Jen, I want to thank you all. When I came off my book last year, Deadly Betrayal, if you go to page 58 and 59, it spells it out for you. For those who have purchased the book, and I know you all had it, it tells you that is the final piece of the plan. They are scared of Iran to go to battle, which we've already saw with the ballistic missiles that we cried and Israeli cried uncle, as though we had won. No, they were afraid of ballistic missiles. As part of the master plan, you take out Iraq, Saddam, Assad is gone. Who's left? Iran. And the key plan was we can't go to war with them because the country is large. We can't go to war because that'll bring the people together. So what do we have to do? We have to cause internal unrest, both inside and out, supported by the CIA and Mossad. And oh, by the way, we're going to do it with exiles. And just for some reason, some name keep coming up to me, Reza Pahlavi.
Yep.
And who is that guy? Well, that happened to be the son of the former Shah who was overthrown. And he's speaking louder than anybody. So I know this playbook very well. I saw it in the Pentagon, and it's a continuation of the takeover of the Middle East, with Iran being the final piece. And how they're going to do that? Before we go to war, we want to try everything we can with internal unrest. And it's playing out now, but guess what? It looks like it's ending because it didn't work. And so I must tell you, the next thing is truly all-out war.
I think Bibi called Trump, and I think he told him, hey, it's not working.
It's not working.
We're going to have to go to plan B. And what was it that wasn't working? If you look at what happened over the last few days, you were looking at 1953 repeated with a lot more modern technology, a few more players, a lot of different strategies on the ground, most of it led by Mossad, but MI6 is there. The British were there in 53, and the CIA was there. The CIA was there. People don't remember or never knew anything about that coup. Kermit Roosevelt, in charge of it, literally as one individual, a CIA guy, was in Iran and working on it desperately with money that was coming in to buy people to shoot other people and so forth, to cause riots, to burn buildings, crash cars, and so forth. And he failed, abjectly failed. And he told Washington that. And I've got to assume that London was surprised of it too. And what happened then was they said, double down. Here's more money. Go hire some more people. Go shoot people. Go burn buildings. Go burn cars. Go do everything you possibly can, especially around Tehran. And who called it off? Mossadegh called it off because he watched his own people being killed in the streets. And he said, I'm not going to take this. And so he stepped down. And we got the Shah in, and you know the rest of the story. That's exactly what they've been doing for the last few days, with a lot more modern technology, including satellite hookups to tell them exactly who to shoot in the back. It wasn't the IRGC. It wasn't the Iranian government so much. I'm sure they did some because they made mistakes, but mostly who they were ferreting out were the Israeli agents and the others and shooting them. If you saw Mike Pompeo's post, he actually said, thank you, you Iranians, and also
and Mossad agents next door
walking along with. That's what we were doing, and it failed. It failed spectacularly. And I understand there's a lot of people in jail in Iran right now who probably won't get out for a long time if they're not executed. But
okay, so Jen and I were talking about
what comes now. What do we do now?
Well, Larry, unfortunately, I know you were going to say something, Peter, but that's where Plan B, the internal insurrection and so forth, was supposed to be the Plan A to keep us from going to war. Because of the fact, I'm going to tell you right now, we've seen it already. Those ballistic missiles are powerful and they're very accurate. And oh, by the way, the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, better known as the Iran nuclear deal, the reason we broke that, meaning the Trump administration, because they wanted Iran to get rid of the ballistic missiles. And they're not going to do that because that's their lifeline. And we're afraid of those ballistic missiles. And so now Plan B, where some decisions are going to have to be made, because the only way you're going to take down Iran now is through the all-out war, which, oh, by the way, originally, before Bibi personally now saw the ballistic missiles and their accuracy, he wanted that all-out war. But he needs to think about, because I'm being told, and Larry know this more so than I do, that those ballistic missiles, they have enough to truly destroy Israel.
Well, they're in a pickle right now. Trump's going to have to make a decision whether or not, if Bibi wants to go ahead, Trump goes with him. There's no way Bibi can do it, not by himself.
Absolutely not.
And Jen and I were talking earlier today that, and again, if I'm the leader of a nation, I'm just thinking objectively, if I was in a position of power, if I'm catching Mossad agents as have been caught on the streets of Tehran, I'm executing them in the public square. Like I'm making a statement. I'm making it very clear.
Oh, I'm not with the execution, but I'm not necessarily with a trial either. So yeah, we could find some sort of middle.
I'd go further than that. You know, under Article 51 of the UN Charter, the self-defense article, Iran has every right now to preempt, to go after Israel and ultimately the United States too, because they have been attacked. They've been attacked inside their own territory by foreign agents supported by Israel and the United States. And I suspect Britain's there too. They're always there when something heinous is going down, especially with Iran. So they have a right to preempt. They could attack Israel right now.
And it
would be self-defense.
Yes, it would be self-defense.
Yep. And if you look at the flip side and you want to talk about the type of propaganda that you get in Israel, the Times of Israel says that it was Netanyahu is said to have asked Trump to hold off on striking Iran, even though everyone knows that it was a collection of Gulf states that said, no, this is not the right way to go, and Trump ultimately listened. And then you have Mossad said to tell U.S. at least 5,000 killed in Iran protests. Okay, let's just say that it's, again, whatever the number is, let's say it's a few hundred, say it's 1,000. How many of that was due to provocation by Mossad? I think that's an even bigger question that a lot of people should be asking themselves, because we're seeing them all over the place now. They want to make this out like, oh, the Iranian people are rising up. Well, you know what? Maybe they are rising up. But again, they don't want the West taking over their country. And that is the full intention of why I believe that the US and Israel is trying to turn this thing into an all-out regional war. Your thoughts on that?
Well, Nima Al-Khurshid, who's an Iranian citizen, lives in Brazil now and has a Dialogue Works is the name of his podcast. He's been in Tehran for the last 3-4 weeks, and he's been emailing me periodically. And one of the things he said is in the places he's been, and not just Tehran, he's been around in other places too, north, south, east, and west. He said, what's happening is, and this is where I get the 1953 metaphor or the analogy, what's been happening is they've actually been shooting Iranians. They have actually shot them, killed them, and then blamed it on the Iranian government, the IRGC, the Bajali, or whatever. And the Iranians figured it out, and they began to corral these people and jail them. And that's what stopped the protests yesterday. It wasn't the fact that it was spent or anything. It was the fact that they took the major perpetrators of it down, literally took them down all around the area where it was happening. Another thing about it, there are genuine reasons for the Iranians to be protesting, and they really started out genuinely protesting. The inflation, the fact they can't hardly buy a meal, the fact that the IRGC is making tons of money, and every Iranian knows this now. They steal the money. They don't give it to the people. The government goes along with that. So yeah, there's legitimate reasons to be protesting. But as in the previous protest, remember when the woman was killed and it looked like things might get really bad for the Islamic State, and they did? What they did was they really disenfranchised that regime in terms of its legitimacy to rule. The regime reacted to that in a certain way. I'm not saying they're not still draconian, but they are trying their best to deal with the problems they've got. And here's another thing. The Iranian on the street, and Nima will confirm this for you, the Iranian on the street, when you ask them what's causing the problem, 9 times out of 10, they say US and European sanctions. They don't say the problems in Iran. Now, they'll come to those eventually if you go on with them in the discussion. But the real problem they see is the sanctions. They know the sanctions are doing irreparable damage to them. Everything from not allowing them to get clean water to drink to making food prices so high. Our sanctions are draconian. Remember what our sanctions did to Iraqi children in the 10 years of those sanctions? Something like 500,000 Iraqi children were affected and died from those sanctions. That's who the sanctions hurt when you blanket them like we're doing. Not the people you want to hurt, the Saddam Husseins. It hurts the people who try to live from on a day-to-day basis, just like we in this country. And the Iranians aren't having a very good time of it right now. And it's principally due to our sanctions.
Larry, I smiled because I just wrote the word down, sanctions. Spot on. I was just ready to mention that. That's the key. The sanctions that we've put on them, and what allows us to do that, of course, everything is traded in the American dollar, and that's why they're trying to have a BRICS, the BRICS nations trying to come together so they can get themselves off the American dollar. But it's the sanctions that is really causing the inflation and a lot of things going on in Iran right now.
And all these other countries too. We've got all this mess in the world right now that we've created largely. The Europeans are chickens. They won't back off any of this because they're afraid we'll leave them. They've got so many different, we'll take Greenland. We're going to take a territory of a NATO member. This is really fractured. NATO was moribund anyway, but it would have taken a while for it to die. But it's going to die quickly with Donald Trump.
What is the impetus to take Greenland? Is it really just resources, or what is the whole deal there?
We had, when I was first in Washington with Colin Powell as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, we had some 31 installations on Greenland. Those installations were accepted. They were used. The locals made something from them, the money that was spent at the places and such. They were mostly artifacts of the Cold War. So in 1991 and 92, President H.W. Bush said, go out and find out what those artifacts are, and we can save some money. Eventually, we saved about 25% of the defense budget. We closed all these things down. And the only thing we left in Greenland was Thule. So why, if you really think you need Greenland in a military sense, why not just, I'm sure the Greenlanders in Denmark would agree to it, just put those installations back as you need them, strategically, operationally, and so forth. I don't see that we need all that, but maybe we do need a few, because Greenland is key to monitoring that portion of the Arctic that is beginning to be, especially by Russia, much more trafficked and much more utilized. And so I wouldn't put it past us to have a real good reason to want to be back at some of those places in Greenland. But why do it this way? He knows no history. Hegseth knows no history. None of these people know any history. They don't do any studying. They don't do any referencing. We've had things there before. I'm sure the Danes would let us have things there again. So why cause all this mess? It's because Donald Trump can. Remember his words the other day? The only limit I have on my power is me.
Yeah. Hey, just to add on to what Larry said in your original question, yes, me personally, I do think it's about the minerals that are there. That's what Trump's believe in: minerals, resources, oil. I've been to Thule. I've been to Greenland a couple of times in my last 3 years in the military. I was part of what was called Air Force Space Command, and we had NORAD and Space Command, and we had responsibility of our nuclear weapons. And as Larry mentioned, it was about pre-warning systems for us in case of an attack, by Russia or whatever the case may be. And we closed some installations there. And so there's no doubt in my mind the Dutch will work with us if we wanted additional personnel there. So it only leads me to believe that it's about the minerals. We want to own the minerals.
I would like to think that
at the same time, we've just discovered massive amounts of these minerals that are on Greenland in the United States. But we're not going to go after them because we're not going to interfere with people's lives.
Right.
We're not going to go break up roads and tear down universities and so forth. It's incredible what we're doing when we're sitting on stockpiles of many of the things we need, critically need, both in the civilian and the military infrastructure, if you will, and we're going to go get them elsewhere.
To include all.
We're going to disrupt other people's lives instead of ours.
Gentlemen, we've definitely reached a point of no return when it comes to the devaluing of the U.S. dollar. It is obvious that BRICS and the contingency between particularly Russia and China is continuing to grow. How much time do you give it before there is an all-out debasement of the U.S. dollar, and whether it's a full-on depression or whatever it's going to look like?
Who's going to win?
Not
Who's
us.
winning when this is over? Because it's not us.
Well, if you saw Anatole Lieven's piece this morning, Quincy Institute, I think he's on to something there. The Europeans right now are talking about doing the same thing to Russian shipping that the United States was doing to Venezuelan shipping in the Caribbean. In other words, in the Baltic and other places like that, intercepting these ships and confiscating their cargoes and so forth. Putin has been very clear about what that means. That means war with NATO. He knows he cannot win a war with a unified NATO. He can't. It's too powerful. Even though in its individual pieces, it might be not so powerful, but with the US, Turkey, and everybody else in there, if they were all there, he couldn't beat them, especially not with the other things he's trying to do, like in Ukraine, where he has so many soldiers committed. He's been very clear, and so is Sergei Lavrov, his foreign minister. I'll go nuclear. If it's existential to my country, I will use nuclear weapons. I don't know why the Europeans and we can't understand that. He is not joking.
Well, we're looking at it in the same direction as Netanyahu Milikowski, because it is obvious that the reason, I believe as much as anything, the reason why the Israelis are able to get away with as much as they've gotten away with is because they have made it very clear that if their nation is in danger of collapse, they will employ the Samson option. They will use nuclear weapons. If anyone is capable of dropping a nuclear weapon as they leave this earth, it's Netanyahu. Like, to me, he's number one.